life sucks and things happen to you, but you have to always think, what is the one thing, just the one single thing you could do to help yourself?
My hope with Project Kind from the very beginning was that we would be able to create ways for people to come together and share what they have with those in need.
Once he is able to fish, we should teach them how to sell their fish. And that then breaks the status quo. It enables them to educate their children. It enables them to go from a sustenance position to a position where they could thrive.
I'm Elizabeth Gearhart.
And I'm Kenya Gibson, filling in for Richard Gearhart. And you just heard some excerpts from our Passage to Profit presenters. And stay tuned for more on Passage to Profit. Welcome, everyone, back to Passage to Profit. I'm Kenya Gibson, filling in for Richard Gearhart, here with my co-host, Elizabeth. And we have a really exciting show for you today. So we have Victoria Wieck, who's actually coming back a second time on Passage to Profit. She built a $500,000 business from nothing. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. And then we also have, following her, Belal Abana, who is actually the first originator of the single origin food company. It's the world's first single origin food company. So if you want to know all about where your food's coming from, you definitely want to stay tuned for that.
And then, listeners, would you take sandwiches into the inner city in the middle of the night and hand them out to the homeless, especially if you were a beautiful, blonde, tiny woman? Well, we have someone here who does that. You want to hear her story for sure. So stay tuned for Jenny DePaul, who's going to be interviewed by Carrie, Barrett.
So welcome back to Passage to Profit. We have a very special guest who's actually returning to Passage to Profit today, Victoria Wieck. So Victoria is a world-renowned jewelry designer. She's an author. She's a podcaster, host of the $1 Million Hobbies, and she's also built a $500 million business from scratch. So Victoria, welcome back to Passage to Profit.
Thank you. So good to be back.
And I think I did you not due diligence in the intro. I think you said you built a $500,000 business. So I just want to make sure we correct that, and that it's actually a $500 million business from scratch. So I want to make sure we put that out there correctly.
It's only a digit difference, 8 figures versus 9 figures. Such a big deal.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, thank you. I don't actually even think about the money really, because when I started, my goal was to, remember I started with no money. I didn't have money to even make a single sample. So basically my goal was to be able to make $2,000 a month, but my dream scenario would have been $3,000 a month. So I didn't even dream about ever owning a home or, buying a new car. I just wanted to just feed my kids and pay my own apartment and pay my car insurance. Maybe hopefully have a little bit of money saved up for, their future. And all I really wanted to do is spend time with them instead of having the nannies, do all that work. So, I kind of overachieved that over those years. And so, I don't actually really think about the money that much.
Well, Victoria, we haven't introduced what kind of business you have, but I think it's amazing that you did this with jewelry, because you think of the jewelry business as a very crowded field.
Oh,
and to be able to go to from zero to $500 million with a jewelry business is amazing. So I don't know, what are your top tips for entrepreneurs trying to do something like that?
Well, do everything with intention and do everything with, give it your heart. And you got to really love your customers. You've got to love their problems, because when you actually, really get to know them, their issues, and you solve their problems, they're going to keep talking about you. They'll fall in love with you. They're going to be so emotionally connected with you that they bring in new customers all the time for you. And I think that is, a lot of entrepreneurs, when you chase the money will never come, because you're in there for all the wrong reasons.
That's a good point, because you're saying you don't focus on the money so much. But I guess it's kind of, is it not hard to not focus on the money? Because I feel like that's a lot of money to not focus on. So what do you have to have a certain kind of mindset in terms of attracting that kind of money into your atmosphere? Like what would you suggest someone does? Like say they only have $1,000 in their bank account to start a business. Like what's some mindset you need to have in order to kind of grow yourself to believe that you can achieve this multi-million-dollar empire?
Yeah, first of all, $1,000 is more than what I had to start my business, so that's the good news. But if you really believe that you have something special, if you really, and you got to believe that because no one else will. I mean, as you know this, no one else will. So you got to believe in, your ability to solve their problem, one person at a time. And when you do that, all these obstacles that are in front of you, like no money, no connections, no experience, all of that goes out the window because you are going to be creating a whole new way of solving problems for them. So for example, in my jewelry business, I mean, as Elizabeth said, jewelry business, I mean, you can go to China, Africa, Kenya, all these places, and you'll find there's a Chinese restaurant and a jewelry store. Okay, everybody's jewelry store is very, very crowded. It's also one that requires a lot of money because you have to have inventory, you really have to buy in volume, all of that. I didn't have any money. So, I believe that jewelry at that time in 1989 was sold. And you guys all know this. I mean, I'm not sure about Belal, but basically most of us women know jewelry is sold on status. Like, oh, I bought this 2-carat diamond from Tiffany's or whatever. That was always sold on status. It was really never sold on the emotional connection. So when I came into the business, I believed that there was a place for moderately priced jewelry that will make you feel elegant, sophisticated, understated, and makes you feel like, you're somebody special. And because jewelry is bought and sold to, create milestone moments, think about, weddings, all the, the celebrations. So I created jewelry that will connect you emotionally, that has a feeling to it, that has a look about it. And also a lot of women that went to work in 1989, we were the first generation of women that actually worked outside of the, in managerial positions. Women before us worked in, as receptionists, Girl Friday. They actually had a title called Girl Friday, believe it or not, So when I created jewelry for that working woman who wanted to feel her femininity and who wanted to express a little bit about herself, there was a market for it. And I believe there was a market for it. I just didn't have a way to express it. So I created a lookbook and, I just pretty much designed them on a piece of paper. I then went to all the department stores, within 20-mile radius. And I asked people, the assistant department managers for jewelry departments usually had I would just tell them, look, I have no experience, I'm a young girl. I have some dreams of starting my own business. I'm kind of like really embarrassed to even show you my designs, but would you just like take a few minutes and, let me know if there's anything in here that your customers might like. And believe it or not, the first one I talked to was Neiman Marcus on Wilshire and Rodeo. I mean, the woman was like, oh my God, like this is beautiful. I mean, our customers would love it. And so they ended up selling them for me. Then I just duplicated the process, at like a 30-mile radius all over LA. So I kind of like got paid before I even got my first sample made. So what I'm saying is like, don't give up. When people tell you, you can't, you're not good enough unless you have a unique selling proposition, you're just not going to make it. The idea that a young Asian woman who barely spoke English can actually get there and do something back then, I got laughed at a lot. But you don't give up. You just have to have some grit and move on.
Well, I think you're pretty bold.
I'd say so.
Don't I look like a boxer,
I think that's one of the takeaways for me is you have to be bold. You can't be afraid to walk into that store up to that person or wherever and just say, look, here I am, look at me. And it takes guts. I mean, we're all afraid of rejection, but you just carried on.
I just want to say one thing. Rejection is just feedback. When I wrote my first book, I told everybody English is my second language. So it's probably going to be horrible. Okay. I've never written anything before. It's going to be horrible. Everybody told me your first book sucked and mine probably sucks more than others, but I just would like some feedback. And so when somebody, tells you no, what I say is instead of getting mad or defensive and you leave or you're embarrassed, what I would say is like, you know what? I completely understand why you wouldn't want this, but is there anything you can give me here? Like any feedback would be really appreciated. So that, what would it take for me to come back and present this to you again?
That's
And
a
you'd
great
be surprised how many people actually will give you all their opinions. And a lot of times those opinions actually they suck too, but but they still like feel like they were heard because, so and you keep doing that. And what happens is like, you don't have to sell to everybody you talk to. If you sell like, look, Babe Ruth, I mean, he didn't hit 1,000, right? If you look at, he was like the best, hitter of all time. He didn't hit 500. So if you get 4 out of 10, you're Babe Ruth in retail.
I need to put that in front of me on like a little plaque somewhere, because Victoria was saying that rejection is feedback. And I know that you're working on writing a how-to book on the American dream. So I kind of wanted to get your definition of what you think the American dream is, or what that looks like.
I was interviewed years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, about that very question. I did a whole collection of jewelry called American Dream, and it kind of like I expressed my journey with jewelry, like the heart, expressed like my passion for something. I had like a mother-child jewelry, but I digress on that. But for me, coming from South Korea, where girls were given up a lot for adoption, aborted, all this stuff. So my parents came here because they had 4 girls. For me, the American dream was to be able to think one day that, a girl born in South Korea can come to America and even dare to dream about having an American dream, that the thought that if you try hard enough, there is, slim chance, but there's a slim chance that you're going to actually achieve your American dream. So my first book, it oddly enough talks about defining the dream. Because a lot of times when you ask a bunch of young kids, what's your American dream? They constantly talk about money, fame, and money. That actually is the wrong way to go about doing that. I think if you ask people to envision the life they can realistically live. So for me, my American dream was to be able to be present for my children, because when I came to America, I was like 13 years old. And I never saw my parents. They went to work 2 jobs each. And I know there are millions of American kids today that have the same problem. Their parents go to work pretty early in the morning and they come home exhausted at 8 o'clock at night or something. My parents didn't come home till like 10. They had a night job where they cleaned offices and all that. So I wanted to be present for my kids. That was my dream life. And that meant that if I'm going to be present for my kids, I can't be working a regular job. So I was willing to work, I was willing to work longer hours, but not when they were at school. And I was willing to live on lower money, like $2,000 a month. I mean, I had an MBA by that point. And most kids, out of MBA school were making like 35, 50 grand a year, just year 1. And I was like year 3 at that point. So, but what happened is, and this is the lesson, what happens is if you have those core values, and this is why you started your business. I got up at like 5 o'clock in the morning every morning. So my kids went to school about 7:45 in the morning. So I got up at 5. Between 6 and 7, basically I called on accounts in Europe. I called Harrods, London, Galloway's Lafayette, all, like Marks and Spencer, all those stores, because 6 a.m. California time is like noontime in England. And I did this like, every day. Because again, like today, if you were to sell a car, if you were to sell a collection to somebody, you need about 5 to 25 touch points. You don't ever sell something day 1. So I basically had it, like a journey planned out. So I did this. So, lo and behold, I found out that all these European department stores, they love American goods. So I was in Harrods before I opened anything in the US. But believe it or not, when I tell like the buyers at Neiman's and Saks, hey, I'm in Harrods and Galloway's Lafayette, and they're like, oh my God, come on over. So I go to Neiman's, I open Neiman's, and then I went to Macy's and I said, I'm selling to, Neiman's down the door. And are you interested? Yeah, of course I'm interested. So this went on and on and on. So a lot of people now ask me like, well, what were you doing before, bless you, what were you doing before you got to HSN? Because people believe that I got a big break by going on HSN. That's not true. Actually, HSN called me after they saw my stuff on the cover of so many magazines all around the world. But I worked around, so I worked like from 6 a.m. to about 7:30. Sometimes my kids were, they were in preschool, so they were a little late. But I did that. And then when they went to school, like when I dropped them off, about 9 o'clock my time, I would start working New York, which is noon. Then, worked all the way down to, California time zone. And I didn't work when I picked them up at 2 o'clock. From 2 to 8 o'clock, I didn't do anything. I didn't answer phones. I didn't ask texts, nothing. But at 8:30, when they were winding down, going to bed, 9 o'clock California time is noon the next day in Japan, Korea, and all those places. So I opened up all the stores out down there as well. So I had a global distribution before. So if you think, carefully about how you want to live your life, it actually, you got a pretty good chance of, because you're so focused on that, you have a real good chance of achieving it.
Well, I just have to ask you, Victoria, that is an amazing story. How many gallons of coffee did you drink?
This morning, like 4.
No, I mean, to do working from 5 a.m. to what?
That's a lot.
I want to talk about what I did in the 30-year career. That could be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That
that's
is
a
the
long
one-
day.
That is the one, yeah, it is really long. But, I worked since I was 15 years old. When I went to UCLA, I worked 40 hours a week off campus. Most kids go to UCLA for like a 5 to 7 year plan because it's tough to get the classes you want, all that stuff. And it's a pretty demanding school. And I worked like 30 to 40 hours a week. So I had all my classes Tuesday, Thursday, but I was in school from like 7:30 a.m. till like 8 p.m. And then I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, 10 hours a day. So I had no time to do anything, but that work ethic of, just pretty much just multitasking all the time and zeroing in on what you need to do all the time kind of helped me, when I started working, with clients and so forth. And the thing is, like, when you're working your own hours, they say, I did not invent this, but they say that if you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life. So it didn't seem like it was hard work at that time.
I really think that was an amazing strategic approach to find a country that wanted American goods, get your foot in the door there, because you're right. People, if you start selling someplace good that other people recognize, then they're going to want to sell your stuff too. So no, you couldn't maybe do that in the States, but like, a lot of people in the US love to buy British stuff.
Yeah.
So it could go the opposite way for people in England, but that's a brilliant strategy.
I wasn't really that brilliant in the beginning. I just wanted to, not that I'm brilliant now, but it was just a survival thing. I was like, I can't work between, 8 o'clock in the morning till whatever. Like I can't have a regular job. I can't do this. So what can I do now? And I coach a lot of people, most of it for free. But what I do is I tell people every day, life sucks. Like sometimes, like this past week, we had a robbery here. Life sucks and things happen to you, but you have to always think, what is the one thing, just the one single thing you could do to help yourself? And if you come up with 10 things, you might even say, oh, I could go and read a book, or, you may do 10 things, but pick the one thing that's going to have the most immediate impact today. So when I go on, I've been interviewed over 300, times. And when people say to me, your story is so inspiring, you're such a motivating speaker, on and on and on. But I tell people, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be an inspiration. I don't want to be a motivator. I want to be the person that will cause you to take the first action. Every journey starts with every 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step. I want you to take that first step today. It could just be defining your dream. Just think about what you really, really want in life. Especially after COVID, what are your priorities? What will make you happy? And I always tell people, start with this question. If you never have to worry about money ever for the rest of your life, and that was guaranteed to you, what would you do with your time? And that's where you start.
Mm-hmm.
You made a really good point. I think COVID forced us all to like look at our priorities and like really reassess like where we are in life. And I love the mentality that you've built for yourself in terms of like just going big. Like it's not like, and not no shade to Walmart, but it's like you went to Harrods, right? Like that takes a certain like mentality to say, listen, I'm just going to go big or not go at all. And look how that's worked out for you. Like, I just think that's a phenomenal tool to have in your arsenal. And the other thing I wanted to point out about your story is it seems like you're a real master of maximizing time. So I want to talk a little bit about that and how, you know, you help people do that, or maybe a few tips on how people can learn how to do that. Because I think that's very key to getting anything accomplished in life.
Oh my God, Kenya, I think honestly, I don't know what happened to you guys, but like I literally had this exact conversation just this week about time management. You have to understand that if you don't make a decision, you know, if you, I had a boss who told me years ago, she's passed on now, but she told me years ago, you know, in the old days, they used to have these printed, you know, before emails, we had these printed dot matrix paperwork that's about this wide. And, you know, there'll be stacks of it at my desk. And if you go on vacation for a week and you come back, they're literally like a whole foot of, you know, this thing. And she would tell me, just throw it out. And just throw it out. Don't even bother reading it, because when you don't answer it for a week, your competitors, your bosses, everybody has taken action on something because they can't, you know, even if it's a small action. So there's nothing for you to make a decision on. So you have to think about two things. Every day we're making decisions, right? Every single day. Entrepreneurs, especially beginner entrepreneurs, are so overwhelmed with so many decisions because, you know, if you're used to taking orders from your boss all your life and you go on your own and you're like, you know, what kind of internet speed do we want to, you know, do I want health insurance for my employees? I mean, all these decisions are so overwhelming. So what happens is they don't make a decision. They think that, you know, they're going to deal with it tomorrow. And then the problem becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Your employee starts leaving, or they start, you know, develop bad morale. You know, this all happens. But every single day, when you look at your decisions, think about it this way. There are only two types of decisions you can make. One is you bet the farm. The decision calls you to basically bet the whole farm. You know, you have to come up with investors, all this stuff. The other type of decisions are decisions that you can make mistakes. It doesn't kill you. Okay, these decisions are, do I make $50 on an order or $100? It's not something that's going to kill you. So when you have your day is stacked with 80% of the decisions that are basically common sense decisions, make it. You know, make it that first time you hear it, because what happens is, you know, you'll make some mistakes. You'll have make some bad decisions. And I think I'm such a huge believer of these other people that's lived before me. I think Mark Twain said, you get wiser by making a lot of mistakes, and you make a lot of mistakes by making bad decisions. So basically, you know, make those decisions the best way you can. Because if in the information age, if you give everybody, all of us, a problem right now, and you give them unlimited amount of time, we're going to all make the right decision. Okay. Because we're above average intelligent people. But what happens is you have to make decisions because other people are making decisions every day, your competitors, you know, the environment, everybody is. So you have to make decisions, plucking out the information that you need. And you know what? You're not going to win them all. But, you know, the other lesson, Kenya, is that there are no failures, because if you fail that first time, it's just like an inexpensive lesson. You're going to do it right the next time. So basically, you make a bad decision, it's not a failure. There are no failures. You're just going to, you know, I'm such an optimistic person. I can't think like this was bad and it's going to kill me. So, you know, yeah. So time management, if you do that, and then some decisions, you don't even have to make it. You're like, you know, if scenario A happens or B happens, it doesn't kill me. So just let that one go.
For sure. Well, Victoria Wieck is here giving us the game today on Passage to Profit. We appreciate you. And I just want to pivot back to Elizabeth. Is there anything you want to ask or you wanted to wrap up with?
Well, we're going to have to go to break. Thanks, Kenya. We will be picking Victoria's brain throughout the show. There's a lot there to pick. So we'll be right back. Listeners, you're listening to Passage to Profit on WOR 710, the voice of New York, with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, but our special co-host today, Kenya Gibson, and our wonderful guest, Victoria Wieck. Welcome back to Passage to Profit, listeners, on WOR 710, the voice of New York. We have just interviewed Victoria Wieck, myself, Elizabeth Gearhart, my co-host, Kenya Gibson today, standing in for Richard Gearhart. And if you missed that interview, you can hear it on our podcast that comes out tomorrow. She is amazing. She went from 0 to $500 million, and everybody I know would love to do that. But now we have this woman just blows me out of the water coming up. Her name is Jenny DePaul. And if you ever wanted to do something to make the world a better place and you weren't really sure what to do, well, she found something. I mean, the fact that she does this just blows me away. And we have a special guest interviewer, Carrie Barrett from Carrie Barrett Consulting, who will be interviewing Jenny. So welcome.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
thank you for having Jenny. Yeah, that was an amazing introduction, because you're absolutely right, Elizabeth. Jenny is second to none. I've known her for about 3 years now. And when I first learned about her mission and her vision for the world, we talk about mission, vision, values, but this is somebody who actually lives them every single second of every single day. And so I was excited to bring her on. She is the founder of Project Kind. It is a registered nonprofit. It's based in Rockaway, New Jersey. They focus on homeless outreach, and Jenny is the heart and soul of Project Kind. So thank you for being here, number one. Number two, you want to dive a little bit further into what exactly Project Kind is and who it looks to serve?
Sure. Yeah. So my hope with Project Kind from the very beginning was that we would be able to create ways for people to come together and share what they have with those in need, and then to go out and serve, right? And to make these connections with people and hopefully inspire them in some way to move forward. So that's what we've been doing for the last really 8 years, because it just started out simply as an outreach that my daughters and I were doing.
Yeah.
And then it grew from there.
So take us back, if you don't mind, a little bit to how that outreach started. I find this so interesting because it was you and your daughters, and you were inspired by your son, Kental. And it started out as just a how do we live our values sort of thing. So can you take us a little bit further into that?
Sure. So early on in my marriage, my family decided to take in foster children. And in doing that, we ended up taking in 15, over a few years. And one of those children, we ended up adopting. His name is Kental. And he came to us when he was 1. And at 3.5, he severely regressed. So he was given a diagnosis of childhood disintegrative disorder, which is considered very severe on the autism spectrum. So at that moment, I had to make this decision, do we adopt him or send him kind of back into the system? And in that moment, I had to think, okay, is this child just as worthy now as he was when he first came to us? And for me, that was a really defining moment in my life, about, well, who am I really? And what does it really mean to live out your truth, right? So I did adopt him, and he is 16 now. And with that, we all just kind of grew so much and learned so much, from him, this child who was nonverbal and
who still is nonverbal. I mean, he's 16 and he's made tremendous progress, but you can't discount this was not a simple, there's going to be some struggles. This was a life-changing decision you made.
Yeah. And I knew at that moment that it would change everything, but what that would look like, I had no idea, so I just had to go back to what my why was in the beginning, and know that I needed to move forward and trust that everything I needed, I would be able to find within me, So we cared for Kental, and we still kept taking in foster children. And at that time, we changed who we took in to kids who were considered difficult to place. And that was only because of Kental.
Your experience.
Yeah, our experience. So at one point, I wanted to sit down with my daughters, my biological daughters, and have a conversation about what it meant to live out your truth, what our why was, and see where they were at. And during that meeting, we came up with 3 truths. And they were that everyone is worthy of love, everyone has purpose, and that no matter what your situation is, we all have something to share and give. So we decided to try and live that out outside of our home. So much of that had been focused in our home with the children and my son. So we decided to go into the inner city. And really at that time, it was just spend time with people who maybe needed to be reminded that they were loved. And we ended up at Newark, Penn Station, and we would bring whatever we had, which really wasn't much, a few peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, if we had a few hats, if it was cold, and we would just go and sit and
recognize them as people, which many of them have not been recognized for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So we etched out some time each week. We would go, we would share our meal with the person sitting next to us, get to know their story, and over time, we started sharing people's needs on social media. And that's when we kind of started. That was the first step in kind of the growth we saw. Was I would wake up one day and my entire porch would be filled with items that we were asking for. And not even that, like letters to the person whose story maybe we shared. So people were feeling this connection, and it just was through me sharing it with them, but they wanted to be a part of that person's journey. Yeah. So that's kind of where we started. And it was just, again, my family going, and then it grew.
And let me just, I'm gonna ask you to sort of backtrack a little bit, but you sat with people, you recognized them, but it wasn't an immediate process. And I think this is really interesting because a lot of us try something or we feel like it's the right thing to do and it doesn't go exactly how we envision it going in our minds. And so we give up, or maybe this isn't the right thing, or maybe I'm going to put my efforts elsewhere. So when Jenny has talked to me about this, she said, it took a long time. Like I couldn't just go sit down next to somebody. Sometimes I would have to spend weeks just trying to elicit like a smile out of somebody by trying to establish eye contact, because for so long, people who are in this situation have just been passed by. It's almost like they're not even there. So it started with these very small steps, eye contact, elicit a smile, then maybe here's some food. Now let me sit next to you. And then the biggest one of all is, here, you want to talk on a video and let me share it with people. But when people did that, and when they had reached that stage, there was something that was completely liberating for them about being able to speak and have people listen. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've found is, people will come to me and ask to share their story. So I feel like for them, it's this opportunity to be seen and heard, and they haven't been seen in a long time, because if you think about the person maybe you see sitting under that bridge or on the sidewalk, I think very often people, avoid eye contact. And I don't think it's because they don't care. I just think it's because they don't know where to start. Like, how could I actually help that
big
person?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I wanted my girls to know, is that you don't have to know the answer to a problem to be a part of the solution. You just have to go, and if you feel led towards someone or something, just make that first step and then let it go from there. So people contact me all the time and see me and say, I want to share my story,
And I love that.
And then we do.
So let me ask you, what does a day in the life of Jenny DePaul as it relates to Project Kind look like? Elizabeth, you mentioned that she's out on the street every night in Newark delivering sandwiches by herself, which is absolutely accurate, like every night for the past 7 years. But talk to us a little bit about, what is your day like? What does your day look like when you're working for Project Kind and the people that Project Kind serves?
Yeah. So, each day I really try to be intentional about, letting my heart lead me and following that pull, like I talked about, that I feel towards something or someone. So, I don't have a great plan for the day, really, but I do now run the Kindness Closet, which is now an extension of Project Kind. And that's our space where people are able to share what they have and drop it off, like all those donations. And then we open it up to the community and people can come in and take what they need for free. So I'm running that. And then we have groups and people who come in and, make the sandwiches or write the kind notes or, volunteers. Yep. And then at night I go out and I deliver those to people who are needing them.
Who need them.
Yeah. But, even in my nights, in the outreach part, that mobile street outreach, when I'm, sitting with people, I'm not just, handing them a sandwich and walking away. I really am sitting with them. And for me, it's, you can meet that immediate need, but there's something about that interaction, that so much can happen with that, you know, if you're open to it. So I really try to build on the relationships.
It's taking that extra step, right? It's not just a matter of feeding your belly, but feeding your soul, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, we focus on the people in need. So it is people who are experiencing homelessness, but also, you know, families that are facing eviction. Maybe there's food insecurities. Maybe their electricity has been shut off.
Yeah.
So we get emails every day from families from all over the country saying, you know, we've been following you and we're facing this hardship, and, you know, could you come? And I will, like, I'll fly wherever, and because I want to meet them, and then I kind of put their story out there and I see if anybody can meet that need.
Yeah.
So creating those opportunities for people to come forward and be a part of someone's journey is also really important.
It is. You talk about that all the time, being a part of the journey. Let me ask you this. You know, this started very, very grassroots. What have you found has been the biggest challenge in growing and scaling, I guess, a nonprofit organization?
Yeah. I mean, so with Project Kind, we're really trying to fill in the gap where maybe other social service agencies, a lot of the time that are bigger, they're not able to maybe keep up, or maybe somebody isn't meeting the requirements, you know, that are needed for them to be served
by that particular agency or wherever. So these are the people that are,
they're
a lot of them.
That has always been my focus. You know, I like to help the people they have tried everything, and for whatever reason, the way the system is set up, their needs are not being met, but their needs are important and they're worthy of, you know, of having these things. So those are the people we've focused on.
Yeah.
So for us, really, you know, it's the monetary piece is difficult.
Yeah. That's the biggest need, is really money. I mean, you've got tons of food and clothing, but I think it's the challenge of every nonprofit is financial resources, right? And
yeah. So, you know, we just kind of, like I said, I do what I can where I can. And, you know, I was thinking back to when we did our very first outreach, me, Lily, Annabelle, and
your daughters.
Yeah, we served 4 people. And I know through COVID last year, I think we served 75,000, or closer to like about 80,000 people. And I'm, you know,
that's amazing.
It's really, and that's not because of me, really. It's because, you know, it's just giving people a way to give. Yeah. That's doable for them. They will. Yeah. And, you know, every give is equally important, whether it's a sandwich or, you know, $100,000 or, you know, you're going to touch someone's life. And that's what it's about.
What would you say are some of the mistakes you made, or maybe top tips for if somebody's listening or watching and they have an interest in being part of a nonprofit, or even perhaps starting their own? What advice would you give them? Mistakes you made, things you did right?
I mean, so, you know, I never intended on this turning into a nonprofit, right? Yeah. So it was really about just doing what I feel led to do. And kind of, for me, it was seeing what came to us. And I think what was important for me was, you know, at one time, a lot came to me. Yeah. A lot of offers from different people that I didn't expect would ever know my name even. Yeah. So it was about being careful about, you know, what direction do I want to go in? You know,
it's easy to get scattered.
It's so easy to get scattered, you know, and making sure you just stay focused and remember, you know, what your why was in the beginning, because things can kind of, well, for me at least, there was just a lot of offers from different people and things like that coming to me with different ideas.
Yeah. Right. And, but it's easy to get, and it's the same thing for any business owner. It's, you have all these people coming at you with all this advice. You can't do that. You can do this, do it this way. No way, do it that way. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed with all of that. But for you, the key, and I think for many of us, probably the key is just going back to here and figuring, okay, which one of these things gets me there? right? Where I
Oh,
want to
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Stay focused. Remember what your why is. And, you know, a lot of people thought that, you know, I shouldn't be doing some of the things I was doing, but I knew it felt right to me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know people always say like, I'm in the inner city in the middle of the night and things like that. And I can't tell you how many times people have told me like, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
But it is the best part of what I
It's
do.
the part that keeps you going,
It is,
right?
yeah. It is where I feel the most comfortable, the most at ease, and where I've just been completely welcomed. You know, you have to think of it this way too, like I'm going into their space.
Yeah.
They're welcoming me in.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I'm not doing them a favor, you know,
Yeah.
they're letting me be a part of their life. So it's been a great journey for me. And the amount of people that have come forward and helped along the way, I mean, thousands of people. So I get to witness all these acts of kindness, like multiple acts of kindness
Yeah.
every single day, which is amazing for me.
It gives you a little faith in the world.
A lot of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to give Jenny a second before we wrap up here. She's always involved in, you know, she went to Texas last year in the winter when they had the huge ice storm and there were tens of thousands of people in the freezing cold without power. You've raised money for hurricane victims. You have a bureau over in Africa where you're building schools for children. You're always, you know, as any nonprofit is, looking to raise money so you can serve more people. You've got fundraisers coming up and you also have a book that's coming out as well. So if you want to talk about those two things.
Sure. Yeah. The fundraiser is going to be on December 2nd. And our hope is to, you know, raise some money and raise awareness. And then the book is called Why Kindness Matters.
Okay.
And, you know, it's about why kindness matters, like, you know, how important it is, and kind of my journey and story. And I share people's stories that we've helped. And there's some testimonies from them. So that's coming out.
And I think one of the cool things, and I'm going to ask you to let people know where they can get more information about both of those, but I've been to a number of Jenny's fundraisers and she always has people there who have been impacted by Jenny, obviously, and by Project Kind. So people that have moved from homelessness to housed, and people who have been impacted, it's just remarkable to hear them sort of witness for what Project Kind does. But where can people get more information either about the fundraiser, perhaps they'd like to attend, or perhaps they'd like to donate, and where can they buy the book?
So projectkind123.org is the website. So the fundraiser information will be on there. And then whykindnessmatters.com is the website where people can pre-order the book even.
Pre-order the book. Yeah. And is it on those standard sites like Amazon or? Okay. So there you go. Isn't she amazing, Elizabeth?
She is wonderful. She's brave. I mean,
right?
We have these brave women on this show today.
She's remarkable. Thank you.
Done. So so I wanted to hand it over to Victoria and say, Victoria, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's amazing what she's been doing, kind of like all by herself. You know, that actually shows you the power of a mission, like power of, you know, a purpose-driven project like the Kindness Matters. I just have a couple of suggestions for you. Okay. You know, in retail merchandising, we always offer the good, better, best. So, you know, I do a lot of volunteer work, and I've actually worked with the LA mission, San Diego mission, you know, all these missions where homeless people, you know, get a little bit of help. Have you thought about raising money, like maybe like once a month? Are you in New York or Jersey?
New Jersey. Okay,
so if you're in Jersey, I mean, it's like Restaurant City, right? So you could do New York or New Jersey. And if you basically approach some of the restaurants, number one, all restaurants have like things that they can't sell after a certain amount of time. Like, you know, 5, 6 o'clock, they'll know they'll have X amount of bread or, you know, salads, all the stuff that they have to discard. So, you know, you can kind of approach them that way. Hey, we're going to solve your problems. You can take a tax deduction, all of that. But you might take 1 week out of a year. And it could be, you know, have the restaurant people, like restauranteurs who would participate in them, and you would highlight them, you know, you would give them a press release and all that. But tell them like, that week, if they order an appetizer, but they don't eat it, so it's actually better for their weight loss and all that, that restaurant can donate the money to you, and you'll be surprised how much money you actually raise and how many, people are dining at these places that are like 20, $30 an entree. And you're telling these people, this is all going to the homeless people.
Right.
And, if you get a hit rate of like even 30% of, the diners, especially if you just have to pick like 10 restaurants and just really highlight them. And that gives you press coverage to go to press. And it'll give you some awareness of who you are, what you guys do, and how simple it is for people to just order an appetizer and not eat. I mean, it could be that restaurant, you just have to pick a course. Like it could be something inexpensive, like a $10 dish.
Yep.
And that's just how I would go about raising, And if you do that, like Restaurant Week, for example, or Fashion Week, there's all this stuff going on in New York, the Tri-City area. I would think that would be, you still do the gala, like the fundraiser event and all that, but
Right.
you got to be a little creative these days.
You know what, Victoria, I've never heard that before, but I would gladly give my dessert to a homeless person.
Exactly.
Don't need
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for
Right.
those people that really, really want to eat it, they could order too.
There you go.
Exactly.
So-
It would be such a selfish thing to do to, go to those places and not. And I just have to tell you, I work with the LA Children's Hospital, Rady Children's Hospital here, St. Jude's. We did some, when I was at HSN, our old CEO, Mindy Grossman, who is now with Weight Watchers, approached me with the idea of doing Christmas ornaments, like all the designers. I think there was like 8 of us. Designers gave our time to create a Christmas ornament. So when they buy something in December for everybody else's gift, we did this beautiful Christmas ornaments that are like, they were huge like this. They came with the stand. We got like Swarovski, all this company to kind of donate the materials. I donated my design services. And I think there were 8 different ornaments, but I think they raised a couple $1 million because they were asking people, you're already buying Christmas ornaments anyway, just buy it here. It's like $19.99 and all of the money goes to St. Jude's. So, there's a lot of different ways. When I was at the LA Children's Hospital years ago, a lot of those moms approached me and said, like, most of the moms that are volunteering are people that are so connected. Like they have a kid that's, got terminally ill. Like they're just so emotional. Like they can't talk about it like without crying. So they asked me, because, I have a business brain, to come and kind of run the whole, like, the fundraising part of this. And so, just, that's like an easy picking because you're kind of working on their guilt trip a little bit.
Yeah. I like it.
We have a couple minutes. Kenya, do you have any comments about this?
I just want to say what you're doing is wonderful. It sounds like you're doing street ministry in a way, right? You're taking what, goodness is and you're spreading it along to people. And I'm sure people appreciate that, especially during these times. So I just wanted to just say thank you for what you're doing because it's important, super important.
Yeah,
I think one of the things, I'll just jump in very quickly, is that, and this is a challenge for, I think, every nonprofit right now, but the need is so great, especially now during the pandemic. There's mass amounts of people who lost their jobs, who are food insecure, who are without need. And then does that affect donations at all? Did you find that donations decreased?
Yeah. So during COVID, I found that a lot of social services weren't running.
Yeah.
Everybody shut down, So Project Kind we kept going, we kept open because the needs just came pouring in, and it wasn't the regular people, that were coming to us. It was this whole other group. Now it was people who have never really faced a financial challenge before, and now here they are, they've lost jobs, they've gotten laid off, or it just opened us up to a whole other group of people. So the needs grew, so did the opportunities for people to come together, communities to come together and share what they have. So we just kept pushing forward.
Yeah.
So we just kept sharing it, sharing the needs, sharing the stories. I was out every night still through COVID, and seeing people on the street that have never been homeless before, and people gave.
Yeah.
They gave, the food, the clothes, all of those things. the monetary donations, they kind of remain the same though.
Yeah. Right. So your resources are stretched thin.
Yeah. And we've had so many now offers and people requesting Project Kinds in their areas, right? And there's so much potential for us to grow. But with that, most people are going to want to get a salary. Like not everyone's going to do this the way I've been doing it. And it requires hiring people and, overhead and all of that. So we could grow, but we definitely need that monetary piece figured out.
projectkind123.org. If you really want to impact a life, and here you see the person who's absolutely going out and doing it herself, please donate, please look it up, come to the fundraiser, buy the book. It's this is a wonderful thing that she is doing. So we'll be right back after this message. You're listening to Passage to Profit on WOR 710. Well, welcome back, listeners. Now it's time for Kenya Gibson's segment, Power Move. Kenya, who's our Power Move today?
Yes, so on Power Move today, we have rapper and young entrepreneur Josh from YNC. So if you're not familiar with him, he's a very well-known figure in the music sphere. And now he's made a power move and a step ahead of his game by collaborating with JoJo Simmons, who's the owner of Celebrity Boxing, which has become this major entertainment platform. And he's actually landed his first fighter, which is Sam Wright from Growing Up Hip Hop, to participate in a celebrity boxing match that's going to be coming up in November. It's set to be one of the most talked about events of the year. And if Sam wins, he'll be the lightweight hip hop champion. So exciting things going on in the world of celebrity boxing, which is a whole thing now.
So do they do dance moves during their boxing?
It's funny. I know. Not that I've seen, but it's been this really cool blend of music and sports and very entertaining. Carrie had mentioned earlier in the show that Lamar Odom had done one, and there's a bunch of people who are just hopping on this whole bandwagon of celebrity boxing and finding other ways to build a platform and content. So it's pretty interesting and entertaining to watch some of them, actually. They're not really boxers. Some of them.
They don't get to hit the face, right? Because these people are
they really fight, and they're really not good, some of them. So it's like you're like, oh my God, is it worth a check? Like you feel so bad after watching some of them. But people tune in, they like it. So it's like a real thing now.
It's crazy.
But I know you were going to talk about Fireside as well.
Right. So for those of you who haven't heard the show before, I started my own startup called Fireside Directory. It's a video directory of small businesses online. And I have artists and authors too, where I've been interviewing people and putting them on my YouTube channel and my website. And I have nonprofits too. So I've been building this, and I filed a couple patents on it last couple of weeks ago. And now I'm getting my website redone because the website I have, I don't really like. And so I'm on to the next step of a new website and trying to get this in shape to really start expanding it from here.
Awesome.
So
we have coming up on the show today, Belal Abana, and he is the founder of the Single Origin Food Company. And I was saying that it's the world's first single origin food company that provides ethically sourced organic non-GMO produce direct from the farm to your table. So welcome to Passage to Profit, Belal.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, excited to hear all about what you're doing with food. Tell us.
So in essence, what we do is we believe in people's right to know where their food comes from. And although you can get vegetables which are locally grown and fresh produce, we realized that my co-founders, Colin and Mo, we realized about 6 or 7 years ago that there was a big gap in things that we ate which weren't fresh, in identifying where they came from, whether it's your rice, your sugar, your salt. Those base products are knowing where they come from are just as important as the fresh produce, we believe. So we're the world's first dedicated single origin food company. There are a lot of people who do source directly from specific places, but that thought process forms our decision making on everything we do.
how does the process work? You'll find something for instance, a farmer in Pakistan, right? And then what happens?
So Colin, who's my co-founder and the inspiration behind the whole single origin concept, I'll just give you a little bit of a history. So Colin developed adult epilepsy in his early 40s. And in order to balance his medication, he started drinking coffee. And in his strive for a better cup of coffee, Colin found single origin coffee. He knew where it came from. He knew how the people growing it were being treated. And he could lay claim, prove the claims that they made, whether it was organic or fair trade or whatever. So Colin thought to himself, I should feed my kids single origin food if it has all these benefits. And his search only turned up cocoa, coffee, tea, and wine, which was no diet for 3 growing girls. And that was the light bulb moment. And Colin, with a lot of belief in charities and philanthropy and giving back and helping people, came to myself and Mo for business inspiration on how we can help him take, or as a group, take this project from an idea into practice. And that's how it started. So we identify either a product or a farm. Sometimes at the beginning it was led by, we found a rice farmer that needed help. That rice is a very heavily commoditized product, so the aggregators and the people used to pay the farmers very little money, with farmers making losses in lots of cases, and without a voice or a way to share their product with a wider audience. So they were forced to sell to the people who purchased it. And we do our research, make sure that they care about the things that we care about: no child labor, no slave labor, organically grown and certified where possible, non-GMO. And we set on the process then of creating a supply chain for them. How can we get it out of the country? How can we create a distribution model which brings everything here to the USA, where we pack and package and market and sell the products?
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, it's amazing that you bring up rice, because rice in the US is full of arsenic because of all the pesticides that were used in the 80s and are now in the runoff. And rice takes up arsenic better than almost any other plant because it grows in water, and it's going into baby food, and baby food is now toxic. And rice is one of the first things we give our babies. And I think that's causing things like autism personally, but there's no science to back that up yet. But there is science to say there's a lot of arsenic in rice in the US. So it's really interesting that you brought up rice first.
For sure. Well, the other thing is that rice is very heavily aggregated. So we go to the grocery store and we pick up a bag of rice. And I did it once at one of the big box chain stores, I think is the right term for it. And it said comes from one of 5 countries, and it had a list of 5 countries. And for me, as soon as the alarm bells that ring in my head is, if you can't identify which country it actually came from, then what else can we not identify is correct? Like you said, what the arsenic levels, has it been tested? How are the people growing it being treated? And it just opens up and leaves a lot more questions than answers, and therefore concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a processed food phenomenon, and I think the work that you're doing is just so important and so needed, especially with the farmers, because they're like our teachers, our doctors, our healthcare workers. Like, they're so key to just our life cycle and like being healthy. So what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in the processed food space that you're trying to overcome with this, I would say almost platform that you're working on? Because you're really kind of changing the origin of like how we learn about our food and where it comes from.
Yeah, well, just to address your point about farmers, which is super important and probably the key driver behind what we do. And farmers represent, I think, the highest percentage of suicides globally of a single profession now, because what's happening is, as there's less and less money for individual farmers, their kids do not want to continue doing what they're doing, and they're going into inner cities to try and get better jobs, and unfortunately not being able to have the level of education needed, becoming homeless, causing bigger and bigger problems. And it's a massive knock-on effect. And when it comes to us working with farmers, we categorically believe that giving back to them and helping them grow is important. So if you take the old Chinese proverb, I believe it's Chinese, so don't quote me on it, but which is give a man a fish and he'll eat, and teach him how to fish and he'll feed his family forever. And I think going back to what Jenny does and how important just teaching him to feed his family is, I believe it's a basic human right. It's not a luxury to giving him the ability to feed his family. And we believe that the step, or my personal mantra is, that proverb should be modernized and taken a step further. And then once he is able to fish, we should teach them how to sell their fish. And that then breaks the status quo. It enables them to educate their children. It enables them to go from a sustenance position to a position where they could thrive and grow and do things like we are given the opportunity to do through a more sustained education and a society that can help us do so. But yeah, going back to your question, which I went slightly off tangent on.
No, it's okay.
I apologize. So yeah, so with regards to how the challenges we face on a daily basis, and I guess as we started with rice, sugar, and salt as our base products, and we did that because processed foods have become such a massive part of society, and even organically processed foods lack the nutrition that we need as humans. The nutrition isn't the same as it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And therefore, we eat foods which we believe should fill us up, but because we're not getting enough nutrients, we eat more. So, and obesity has become a problem. So the lack of nutrition in our food has become an issue. And we wanted to strip it down to the basic things that people eat. We were under no false pretenses that we would be able to change how people ate. So we wanted to give the basics that people ate, which is rice, sugar, and salt, as a starting point. And how could we give them the best quality and the most nutritious versions of those base products? That's what we started. And it's education is key. And that's our biggest challenge as a small company, getting the news out there and educating people, as I'm sure everyone else on this call faces the challenges, is getting people to understand how they impact, whether it's farmers' lives, their own lives, and how making small decisions like what they purchase off the retail shelf can form much bigger movements.
Right. So Victoria, do you have any comments or suggestions?
Yeah, I found that this whole conversation really interesting because I'm pretty sure that every woman, all over the globe, in America for sure, so many people, when they buy something that's labeled organic, they think that you're safe, you're not going to get cancer, you're doing above and beyond for your family. That's not necessarily true. And, that reminds me, in my jewelry business, there's this thing called conflict-free diamonds and all that. And there's a huge discussion now ever since that movie Blood Diamonds came out. By the way, that movie is actually pretty true. I'm in that business. They'll tell you things like, whenever there's a discussion between lab-grown diamonds, imitation diamonds, and then natural diamonds, the diamond industry will tell you that we go to the hardest hit places, the most economically disadvantaged places, the poorest countries in the world. And my argument to them is, you've been mining diamonds in Africa for 2,000 years. Why are they still poor? I mean, shouldn't they be ruling the world by now? Why are they still poor since you're helping them so much? And like you said, there's no way they can trace every single diamond coming out of 23 different African countries where they're cut, because where they're cut, it's all mixed up. That when they give you a piece of paper saying that, this is guaranteed conflict-free, there's no way they can guarantee that. So I hear you when you talk about the origin, like the rice and the sugar and all that. I just think that you're doing, wonderful work, because it's not a small decision. I'm not even going to go into the farmers thing. I'm just thinking about all of us, our families. We eat, sugar and salt in everything, whether you go to a restaurant, or you cook at home, and that impacts directly your family's health. And I agree with you, Elizabeth, that there is a huge explosion of autism cases suddenly in America. I mean, it used to be kind of like such a slim chance that a family would have like more than one child with autism. And yet, I mean, autism is really on the rise, huge rise. And I think that has to do with what we eat. It's just my opinion. It's not a scientifically proven thing. But, anything I can do to help you, Jenny or Belal, just, let me know when it comes to getting the word out, press. I mean, I think that's both of you are doing some amazing work. And I also agree with you that every life, I mean, if Jenny impacts one single life, that's worth everything she's doing. I mean, it really is. And so
categorically, we're of the same thought, and the again, extend to Jenny, and maybe we'll have a conversation offline how we can help. But we for every meal product we sell, we feed the child. We have a lunchbox program in Kenya, and it goes to it's a different. It's not just a meal. It's we rent land, we grow food, and the schools become self-sustainable, so they can grow their own food, and they barter to buy things that they can't grow, like oil and so on. We now have a school that's fully sustainable, and we're moving on to the next one. The other thing I wanted to share is that usually the people who suffer, so either the farmer gets a good deal and then the consumer pays heavily to buy a product, or the farmer is really squeezed or neglected in order for the consumer to get a product. And we're not a non-profit. We call ourselves a fair profit. So we take what we need to continue to grow the business, and we give the farmers over and above what they can get in their local market. And we offer the products at affordable prices. Our goal isn't to be niche. We're trying to go mainstream. And just over the last year, COVID hit us as much as they did everyone else, and supply chain was an issue in packaging and various other things, which gave us the opportunity to work with our farmers on how could we innovate and provide new stuff. So we started with the basics, and now we launched this year our vegan unhoney, which was our attempt at, which is our first product which attacks environmental issues. So our unmodel, which is alternative to basics. So we're trying to mitigate the issue with the eradication of the honeybee, which are pollinators, and give people an alternative, people who've made an ethical decision, and people who just care about the environment. So you don't have to just be vegan, but that's all been made possible by us working with people who feed their families food. So our products are derivatives of, so it's a process in the making of the sugar, or we work with a date farm in California in making these honeys. And it's really knowing the people who grow the food and caring about the people who consume it comes full circle. It has to be win-win-win. It's not, if the corporation sitting in the middle are the only ones getting richer and fatter, then it's not helping anyone.
That's excellent. So where do people buy your products?
Oh, in a host of places. We're about to launch our online store, so within the next 2 to 3 weeks. But you can get some of our honey products at Sprouts and Whole Foods nationwide. You can get in Safeway Albertsons, have our salts and our rices. You have, if you're up in New Jersey, there are a lot of independents stores that cover our stuff, as well as Shaw's and in the Northeast, HEB in Texas. We're in about 4,000 stores, and it's been a hard slog. And what Victoria was saying earlier really resonates with me. A no is, the worst that someone's going to say is no. And we always ask why. And that's the feedback. And that's understanding how we can improve, because it's not always their problem. I may have a problem with my product. I may have a problem with my price point. I do not always have the right answer on day one, but understanding what can turn a rejection to an acceptance is key. And that's what's helped us get into as many stores as we have, having high quality foods at affordable prices. So we sit across the spectrum of natural independent stores and a host of the larger stores.
So what label should people look for?
The Single Origin Food Company.
So look for the label, the Single Origin Food Company. And do you have a name for your website where people will be able to find you online?
It's www.thesofco.com. THESOFCO.com.
Excellent. Well, we are coming to the end of our time for this segment, but I love what you're doing. I would love to know where all my food exactly is coming from. I mean, I buy cage-free eggs, free roaming hens. I always wonder, is that true? You know, I'd love to go see the farm. So I think it's fabulous what you're doing. And of course, sugar and salt and rice. Well, we shouldn't eat them, but we do. So anyway, you're listening to Passage to Profit on WOR 710. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit. If you missed this amazing show with wonderful people doing wonderful things in this world, you can hear it on our podcast tomorrow. You can see all these gorgeous people on our YouTube channel. And right now we're going to go through who's been on the show. So what did you think, Kenya? That was a great show.
What a great show. And we ended up talking about one of my favorite things, which is food, but like in a really positive and uplifting way. So I love the conversation and the dialogue. And I just feel like the common theme of the show was just like goodness and really creating uplifting opportunities for people. And we had Victoria on today, which was amazing. We always get good gems from her. So all around a very well-rounded show.
Right. And you can find Victoria at victoriawieck.com. That's VictoriaWieck.com. Or you can find her on LinkedIn. She is such an amazing, successful woman who gives back so much. She just blows me away. And check out her jewelry too, because it is really cool. And then we had Carrie Barrett of Kerry Barrett Consulting. That's KERRYBARRET Consulting, who interviewed Jenny DePaul with Project Kind, which feeds the homeless, but also besides feeding the homeless, that's kind of a worn out phrase. She sees them as human beings and treats them as people. And that's almost more important. And you can help her by going to projectkind123.org. And she can always use your help and donations to expand her ministry, which is really what it is. And then we had Belal Albana, the Single Origin Food Company, THESOFCO.com. If you want to know where your food comes from as a consumer, he sources food from farms and knows the whole story. So you really are getting what you think you're getting when you're buying food. But he's also helping farmers around the world stay in business and make their farms successful. It's just the business model he has is really amazing. And that was it. So I do need to ask Victoria for any final comments.
Yeah, I just want to leave with this because I think this applies to both Jenny and Belal. You know, their mission, I'm sure when they first started, whether they thought about this or not, seems impossible at times. You know, we all have entrepreneurial thoughts like, oh my God, why did I get into this? Because it's so hard. Whenever you get to those thoughts, and all of you who are listening too, think about it this way. You know, I'm always inspired by Nelson Mandela's quote, which is he's got a lot of quotes, but the one that's least known, I think, is one of my favorites. And it says something like, it all seems impossible until it's done. So, you know, when you put that into context, here's somebody who's been in there for like 30 years. And, you know, he still had these dreams about changing the country, the world, and he ended up doing that. So when I listen to that, I think about, you know, no matter how impossible it seems, no matter how high of a mountain you have to climb, not doing it is even not even an option. So you better get your rear end moving and start somewhere, because it will get done if you really, you know, have that purpose. So, you know, I just wanted to, I don't want to be inspiration or encouragement, but I think that I was always inspired by that quote.
Excellent. Kerry, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I feel like the theme of this show has been how to make the world a better place. It really has been. in with both Victoria and of course, Jenny and Belal. And I know that sometimes that is such an overwhelming thought, and it reminds me of a story. And I appreciate your quote, Victoria. The story is about a seashore, a beach that's been washed a flood with starfish. And there's somebody going along and picking up a starfish one at a time and throwing them back into the ocean. And somebody else sees them and says, "There's hundreds of thousands of them here. How do you expect you to make a difference?" And the person who's throwing them back says, "Well, I just made a difference to that one." And so it's like, you can take these small pieces and it doesn't feel like much maybe, but those little steps each day make a difference to someone, even if you don't see it directly. So make those steps.
Excellent. And I want to thank Kenya Gibson for filling in today. So if you want to be on the radio or if you want to advertise, Kenya can help you. And she's an amazing creative person. And she just helps everybody. Like, she's certainly within the spirit of this show. And you can find her at Kenya Gibson with a P at iHeartMedia.com. So with that, we're ready to wrap up, but we have to say our thank yous, right, Kenya?
Yes, we have a lot of them.
Yeah, so we want to thank Noah Fleischman, our producer at iHeart. We used to be in the studio. Now he takes whatever garbled up nonsense we can generate here and fixes it up for the radio. And Alicia Morrissey, who is our coordinator, and Chatterboss, who does our video editing, and the whole iHeart team. And thank you again, Kenya.
Oh, thank you. It was so nice to be here with everybody, and always a pleasure to fill in for Richard. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
And don't forget to find us on social media, Passage to Profit Show. We'll be back next week. Done.